There's a bit of snogging going on in the bushes, so it's quite obvious which path they've chosen for the physical pleasure. In behind the wagon, see, well, what's happening? See, there's a Flemish word, hooi. No idea how you pronounce that. H-O-O-I, which means hay, but it also means nothing. So what is happening here, what we're illustrating is the futility of our search for worldly goods, the pleasures of the world, all of which add up to nothing on Judgment Day. And again, remember, hell's just waiting around the corner on the right-hand wing. And in fact, historians have found in 1563, a giant hay wagon was dragged through the streets of Antwerp. There was a religious festival, so they pulled this along, and everybody danced around it, singing about the futility of acquiring or pursuing material stuff. And in fact, there's a Flemish proverb. We'll meet lots of Flemish proverbs next week with Bruegel. The world is a haystack. Everyone grabs what he can, but again, you're grabbing nothing. So in behind the wain, there's a pope, there's an emperor, and there's all sorts of kind of rich noblemen. They've all got nice big homes. So they've got stuff. They don't need to fight over it. But if you look over here, everybody is sort of killing each other, struggling, grabbing the hay, climbing up the hay. This looks extremely like, look at the wheel there about to run over a collapsed figure. It looks very like Christ thrown to the ground under the weight of the cross somehow when that happens. And then all of these hybrid creature, Bosch is very good at kind of transmogrifying people, and the sort of people being transformed into fish. Now, a fish is one of the oldest symbols of Christ, from ichthus, the Greek word for fish, the sort of initials of Christ, if you like. But here it's symbol of because it's almost a phallic fish, if that's the right word, of evil and lust, another 7 deadly sins. So all of that going on there. Now, and again, I don't want to go into all the many details, but on and on and on, there's I think this might be the 5 senses. We didn't do that. No, that's too easy to be a trivia question. Sight, smell, everything. Because that would have to be smell, because there's a woman changing, wiping a baby's bottom. And then that would be taste. There's all sorts of nice fish. There's a dentist here. And there's sort of the idea of quack doctors. You're selling quick fixes and things. Anything that's done to the tune of bagpipes is inherently evil. There's a lot of gullibility in Bosch as well. See here, there's a whole bunch of nuns stuffing hay into sacks. They've got loads of nothing, basically, all being overseen by this obese monk. He would be gluttony. So you're almost throwing 7 deadly sins, or many of them on top of everything else. So the point sort of is, because of our greed, because of our stupidity, and because our denial of the man upstairs, we deserve everything we're going to get. Even owls, an owl sometimes is wisdom. In this context, is sort of evil thoughts, blasphemy, basically. Just a little bit of a sidetrack. The idea of the worthlessness of material goods. There's rather a nice picture in Washington called "The Death of the Miser" by Bosch. Maybe around 1490 or so. It's about 3 feet high, almost a meter high. And again, it's a long, skinny shape. It was probably the wing of a triptych. The other bits have gone missing. So the narrow space somehow adds to that almost sort of claustrophobic quality. So what we see here is the dying man in bed. And basically it's the struggle over his soul. Even on top of the hay wagon, you get the idea of good angels and bad angels sort of competing to get the lovers to go in their direction, basically. So here he is, and there's people, creatures offering him bags of money. There's an actual good angel there, sort of hand on the shoulder, looking up. Well, there's another monster there. But see, here's Christ. In the window, we've seen endless examples of light coming through windows. We're still in the Arnolfini's bedroom. That's a bit surprising, with that nice bed. And here comes, death through the door. And you've got to figure that's him as well. That he's in bed, but he's also here. Because at the foot of the bed is this great chest with all sorts of beasts. Maybe there's a kind of document there. Maybe he's sold his soul. That's another recurring theme in Bosch. Is he putting money in or is he taking it out? You're not quite sure, but he's certainly got the big key around his waist to lock it all up. And then there's a wonderful still life down here, it's almost tremblant of the road thrown over the thing, with again a sort of Dominican-like creature, bug, beastie thing. But the helmet, bits and pieces of armour, the lance, the sword. It looks to me like, again, the pentimenti, a little bit like that ex Homer one. It looks like a crown was sitting there, perhaps. So again, that's material, power, possession, things like that. All of which are, again, absolutely useless. And again, maybe the possibility of a last-minute confession, but probably not. So the same sort of thing there. As I said, up on top of the Wain, this contest for the souls of the various characters. But nobody seems to be going in the right direction. So that's why we're all going to end up here. And as I say, there's very few artists, I think, who've ever created a vision of hell as quite as effectively as Bosch does. And absolutely, I mean, his monsters are good, but this is sort of almost hell on earth somehow. And again, we'll see a slightly better hell in just a minute with the Garden of Earth. But you can see there's a kingfisher again for sort of almost idolatry, things like that. There's a lot of it actually, you know, the word vanitas, V-A-N-I-T-A-S, the Latin word, which is, we've sort of seen it in some areas. So the idea of, again, material possessions, vanity of vanity, all is vanity. If you like things, you know, again, they're valueless. So the whole image, in a way, the whole altarpiece is kind of a vanitas theme. The transience of even the hay itself, the transience of life's dreams and aspirations, that sort of idea. And the tower is kind of a blasted ruin that you see here, and again, this wonderful silhouette against the fiery inferno of hell itself. So this is sort of the tower of vanity, and there are people sort of clustered around it. Toads always equal lechery if you can find them. Even in this kind, I think probably the kingfisher, probably just a symbol of vanity as much as anything. And again, people being sort of shoved along. I mean, odd things like, there's a chappie riding the cow, and he's all in, again, extreme body piercing. But he's holding a chalice, and that might be you're sort of stealing stuff from the church, but it could be spiritual possessions as opposed to, physical gold, things of gold and silver. Wonderfully, imaginative creatures. You can see that. This figure, I think, symbolizes lechery, another seven deadly sin, and this is sort of punishment fitting the crime, because his genital areas are being gnawed off by a toad. That can't be good. And then there's more. He's not having a good day down here either. So again, this is the wages of sin, basically, that very basic idea. So that's as I said, the format is basically the same as this. Now this is the absolute superstar key work, which you should all know and love. Well, not love maybe, but in fact it's one of those, again, deceptively pretty works. As I say, it kind of attracts you. But people have reproductions, they put it on their children's nursery walls because they never actually looked at it. Oh, it's the Garden of Earthly Delight. Oh, that's nice for little Daisy. And Daisy is now totally screwed for the rest of her life if she's actually got out of her crib and looked at this stuff, because there's some very, very weird things going on. So this is the famous Garden of Earthly Delights, another picture, of course, owned by Philip II, the King of Spain. Again, 1500 or so, and I have to double check the date, but that's good enough for just now, a nice round number. And again, the time and a half, remember all of that, where people are thinking about the end of the world. Same sort of format. We start in paradise, we go to this world, and then we end up in hell, and there's no salvation whatsoever. And it's all basically to do with all the sort of festive quality, again, to do with our self-destructive nature somehow. We pursue hedonistic, selfish pleasures, and the punishment fits the crime better. But there is a kind of encyclopedic quality here, which is really quite extraordinary. I hate to say it, but it's one of those images you're almost better to look at in reproduction, because if you go to the Prado, it'll look like that. There's always 87 people in front of it. So it's just sort of annoying, because, you know, groups and guides talking in 7 different languages. And I found this, I don't know if I can call that properly, it's a hugely high resolution image. No, it doesn't say that there. I can zoom right up everybody's noses on this, so this, I don't even have details, I just go around this. So anyway, that's what it is. But on the outside, again, if you fold it up, looks like that. This is the world, I think, on the 3rd day of creation. See, there's God up in the corner. I don't think this part is quite such high resolution, but anyway, he's up there, sort of overseeing stuff. And this is, we're doing light separated from darkness. We've got waters divided, and now land forms are appearing. But it's all, it looks, the whole world looks like a kind of giant crystal ball, very fragile somehow. And again, it looks sort of okay, you've got the heavens and everything else, but then when you see the individual land forms that are forming, they're kind of odd shapes, and again, a kind of dream-like quality, which is quite extraordinary. Again, it's grisaille, again, that sort of greyish business, which is, adds a kind of a sort of an otherworldly quality, I guess you could say. So back into the middle bit, I mean, this is where it's all going to happen. And again, starting out in paradise, and I'm not sure exactly what order to do all this in, but I think we'll just sort of start at the bottom and work our way up. Because this again, it's the sort of last act of creation, the creation of Eve. And I think it's rather good, because, I mean, here's God, sort of, she's a little bit ungainly, some of her. She's got lovely hair already. And I love the expression on Adam's face, because for a whole day he's been all by himself. Hey, you know, kind of, I like this. Good. And so that's, again, sort of going to be the beginning of the end. But it's all innocence, and they're absolutely naked at this point. But you look in behind him, it's a little bit like some of the other landscape. This extraordinary sort of fleshy, sensual, sexual plant forms that appear, all intertwined and with weird fruit all over them and birds pecking away. So that there's a kind of almost animation of the landscape which reflects what's going on. Then there are creatures, I mean, cat-like thing hauling off prey. There are others. It's almost like he knows evolution, that we came out of the water, out of the primordial slime and sludge, and we sort of make it up onto dry land. Because we'll see that motif at other places. But there's a lot of big fish eat small fish, or big bird eat small bird, whatever. There's a lot of pain and suffering going on in the world, even in paradise, which is where we still are. But I mean, you cannot ever... I mean, look at these sort of duck-filled creatures. See how good I can zoom in on them. I mean, there's wonderful... I mean, endless, clever, different stuff. In this context, bunnies... we saw that before, basically fertility, the fertility of it. But also, I mean, these are the parents of the human race, so, you know, there's going to be lots more people coming along soon. And then if we keep plodding up, I mean, what this thing is, you're not quite sure. But whatever, there's an owl in it, so the owl is heresy, basically. But it's very insubstantial. The idea that heresy has no solid footing somehow. It's based on false ideas. So one little puff of wind and this whole thing can be rocked over and fall down. There's another, I mean, look over there, isn't that another creature-like landform? It's almost like a head, a face that appears over there. With all, again, see, look at all these, they're actually swimming their way out of water, onto the land. I think he knows something that before his time somehow. But what's also interesting, look, sort of crescent moon. So this is all, again, the infidel. The monkey, not a bad monkey, a pretty odd giraffe. I mean, what the hell's that? So, and the hybrid creatures, sort of perversions of God's natural law somehow, you have all these wonderful things. And it's a fairly naturalistic elephant, but it's not very big. And you sort of get the idea that somebody saw an elephant and told somebody who told somebody else who told somebody else, but the one word they left out was big. So sometimes the elephants are running around about the same size as dogs. So this is fairly big, that's all right. Monkeys climbing up trees and a porcupine. That's another one you see kind of reproduce all over the place because it's just so weird, this beastie here, but very dangerous. Look at this little family of coming. So that's, you know, all very dangerous. It's just striking me. I mean, are they having a meeting? Because they're rather scary black birds, and he seems to be sort of, you know, summoning them to a. It's like, what is it? Crows. The collective is a parliament of crows. I mean, do crows sit around on telephone wires plotting? I think they probably do. Or maybe Bosch thought it. And here they are swooping. I mean, this is just from a decorative point of view. This is absolutely wonderful. This the birds swooping up and out around this marvelously imaginative shape. And you're not sure if they're. I mean, it's not from our planet, certainly. Look how they come out of here, just go whizzing up into the sky. And just artistically, I think that's just absolutely lovely stuff. And even here, sort of that colour coding we've seen before, that, you know, sort of shading off into the different colours, suggesting space. But that's the weird giraffe. This is from. I'll never find it. Some guy's book about something. Oh, from Cyriacus of Ancona, of course. His book he wrote a book about Egypt. Did they have giraffes in Egypt? Anyway, that's from that book. So it's similar enough that you think that Bosch had obviously seen the book. So it's not quite as weird and wonderful as unique, perhaps, as you might otherwise think. So, coming into the middle bit, now this is, again, where it's absolutely impossible to kind of cover all the ground in this, because, I mean, I bet somebody's actually counted the number of people, it'd be almost, because the idea is that this is all of us, basically, all packed in together. So this is the actual garden of earthly delights that we see here. And this central panel is about over 7 feet high, so it's quite grand in scale. And if you look way down in the bottom right-hand corner, it's hard to just sort of bypass. Anyway, we'll come back and look at some more. So there's a couple sort of in a cave with very odd-looking sort of thing, and he seems to be pointing down to her as if sort of saying it's all her fault. People think this is Adam and Eve, you know, that he's blaming her for all the other mess that we all got ourselves into. I mean, I'm not absolutely sure about that. The thing is that none of this can really be pinned down, I don't think. I mean, there are dozens and dozens of articles about this, dealing with black magic and heretical sects and things like that. SETS, not sex. And whatever, almost makes absolutely perfect sense when you read one. Then you read the next one, and the first one was rubbish. It's sort of like politicians. They all sound so wonderful until the next person comes along. Anyway, that's. I mean, obviously, realistically, if Adam and Eve were still running around in the corner, you couldn't have quite as many people on planet Earth. But basically, what we have to do is to sort of. This is a good example of where you have to do that process. As I said, you start at the top, work your way down, take another couple of inches, then do it that way. Gradually, sort of accumulate your sort of knowledge of the entire image. So this is sort of after the fall, obviously, of man, where they're actually, well, the reason that they're in that sort of cave-like thing, they said to have gone and lived in a cave after they were thrown out of paradise. And actually the other, well, again, you see, the figure in behind there